Hi, and welcome to my channel. Today we're discussing the top 10 mistakes that new travel bloggers make. If we are meeting for the first time, my name is Stephanie Craig. I've been a full-time travel blogger for 4 years, and I've been a travel blogging coach for the past year. However, I became a mom in January, and with the current state of the world, I can't hire any childcare, and therefore it's been really difficult taking on new clients since they have to be people who don't mind if I have a baby sitting right here during the calls. And it's just my schedule has become very unpredictable. So I thought it would be fun, instead of trying to focus on growing the client side of that business this year, that instead I spend the rest of the year recording YouTube videos for you guys so that anyone can benefit from some of this information. Now in my travel blogging mentorship program, I talk about how to build second or third sites for people that are specifically destination sites, and that's a little advanced for what I want to do on here. So we're going to take it all the way back, and today we're going to talk about the top 10 mistakes that new travel bloggers make. Mistake number 1, waiting until they are actually on the road and traveling full-time to start their website. Now, this is a mistake that I made. It's a very common one. I started my website a year before I left on my trip, so I knew I was going to be traveling full-time starting in the summer of 2016. And so I started my website in September of 2015, but I didn't take it seriously because I didn't have a real plan of what was going to be on the website. I wrote a couple articles about a trip to Uruguay and a couple articles about a trip to Puerto Rico, but I didn't sit down and think, and I mean, I don't know if a lot of people in 2016, 2015 even knew to do this stuff. But I didn't have a plan of like what I needed to do and what I wanted my website to be. So the articles from this time period are some of the oldest on my site, and so they still get a little bit of traffic, but they're the worst articles on my site. And it would have been so much better if I had really gone in depth about every trip that I took, and also started to write about places that I already knew really well. Like I could have written more about Philly, which is where I was living at the time. So a lot of bloggers think that the only time that their content and travel advice is going to be any good is if they literally are like, just did it. And actually, you're a travel expert. If you're interested in being a travel blogger, you're probably already a travel expert about certain places, and you can go ahead and get started writing about those. You do not need to be traveling full time. And it's actually a really common piece of advice for seasoned travel bloggers to say, like, the business side of it actually starts to pan out when you're not traveling as much. So being on the road all the time can really hinder you. I have a podcast called Rick Steves Over Brunch, and Rick Steves, in that podcast, we watch episodes of Rick Steves and then we review them. But I am a very big Rick Steves fan. And, he has for 30 years been traveling, but he hasn't been traveling nonstop for 30 years. He goes in the summers and does some trips. He does some trips during other parts of the year too. And then during the rest of the year, he runs his business. So you do not need to wait to start your travel blog. In fact, you should not wait to start your travel blog until you're actually ready to travel full time. And you don't even need to travel full time to be a travel blogger. You don't even need to actually take a trip up to be a travel blogger. I know a lot of people who are very successful writing about the places that they live now for tourists, and those are also travel blogs. Mistake number 2, not writing about the places they know best. So this dovetails perfectly. I have very little content about Philadelphia on my website, even though I lived there for 10 years. And that's because, and I've actually traveled back to Philly twice since I started writing. And that's just because sometimes you don't think of the places that you call home as places for your travel blog to write about. But that's ridiculous because other people are coming to visit. And even if you're from like the smallest place in the world that gets 0 tourists, you probably live near a place that gets a lot of tourists. A travel blogger is not just somebody who goes to London and writes really cool stories about how great their life is from London. It's somebody who shares practical travel information and personal stories. And that can include places that you already are and already know really well. And don't forget those places, because part of the big challenge with travel blogging is proving to Google that you are an authority on a topic. And if you know the ins and outs of your hometown better than anyone else, I mean, you are an authority on that topic. I started a website in 2008 called Philadelphia Daily Photo, and maybe I started in 2007. Anyway, I really wish I kept it up, because the power I would have in terms of like a Philadelphia blog if I had been writing about like the best photography spots in Philadelphia for 12 years, or at this point that would be 13 years. That would be incredible. And instead I gave up because I didn't think it was like the cool thing to do to write about the place that you live. But those are also travel blogs, especially if you're aiming some of your information for people coming there. Mistake number 3, not thinking about it as a business from day one. Now, I thought at the time that I was thinking about it as a business because I thought that the way that travel bloggers made money was that you go out and you do a lot of travel and you make a lot of free content, and then eventually brands want to work with you because you hit some magical threshold that now you're traveled enough to get the respect to get those partnerships. And that's just not how travel blogging works. I do think in the last 3 years, the industry has kind of solidified, and now there's multiple different business models which subscribe if you're interested in how travel bloggers make money and what the specifics of those different business models are, because I have a video planned for a few weeks from now on different business models that travel bloggers can use. But I thought that that you just like earned your way up and you networked your way up. And some people really do that. For some reason, if you're Canadian, that seems to really be, I know so many Canadians who that truly is their business model. But especially for like Americans and for most travel writers, that's really not the case. You can start doing affiliate marketing from day one. You need to think about SEO. You need to think about like, how are you going to make money? You need to decide what your business model is going to be ahead of time. And like I said, if you don't know how travel bloggers make money and you're just thinking you want this as a career, but you don't know what the actual business models are, subscribe so that you can see the video that'll come out in a few weeks about that. I was thinking about it as business because I was going full time and serious and I was going to live on my savings until I figured it out. And luckily I did eventually figure it out. But there are so many more resources available, including this channel now, for how to do this as a business from day one. You can leave for a far off adventure with a big savings account and basically be an intern for yourself for a couple of years and, hope everything works out. And if you have a long enough runway with your savings account, like I did, like you will luck out and you probably will figure it out. But there's a lot of people who don't figure it out, and it would be better if you had your business model in mind before. And also, if you just want to go on a big adventure where you live on your savings account and you're not sure that you want to take the travel blogging side of it seriously, then don't worry about it. Just have a cool Instagram for your family to see. Like, travel blogging is a career, and because it's some people's hobbies, there's like blurred lines, and there's people who think of it as their career but don't actually live off of it. There's people who use it as a portfolio for other things. But if you actually think you're going to want the income from travel blogging, you need to think about that from day one, because you will set up a different, like your content will look different depending on what kind of business you want it to be. And you'll spend your focus and you'll learn different things depending on what kind of business you want it to be. All right, mistake number 4, not learning SEO from the beginning. SEO is search engine optimization. And a lot of new travel bloggers, it's just like a very frightening, overwhelming concept. And I'll tell you, my main travel blog is just turned 5 years old. And the first 3 years of the content on there is garbage. Not necessarily a lot of it's really poorly written, but some of it's just things that like no one will ever read. There are some articles I have on my website that make me 1 cent a month, but there's some that make me 0 cents a month, even though they rank for some stuff because I didn't know search engine optimization. And I also thought my blog is so new and I'm so inexperienced that my blog will never rank for stuff, even if I know it. So I'll tell you what changed my mind about SEO and actually changed my life is that I went to a blogger conference, and we'll talk subscribe if you're interested in conferences, because I'll give you my honest opinion about the pros and cons of conferences in another video that I have planned. So I was at this conference and I knew that Gemma from this group, Make Traffic Happen, I didn't know her from that group yet. I knew her from her main blog, which is Two Scots Abroad, was giving a talk at this conference on search engine optimization. And I knew that she was really good at it. So I was really excited to go. And the way that her and Laura, who is her business partner, laid out SEO, it was the first time that it clicked in my brain that not only was it something that I could do, it was something that I could easily do. And if I could teach algebra, which I did, 15 years ago, if I could teach algebra or like take an AP Calc class, then I could very easily learn SEO. But there is a difference between knowing you should learn it and actually like starting to implement it. So I left that conference and I was just like my world opened up. But it took me like another 4 or 5 months before I really understood it and how to apply it into every single article that I was doing. But I went home, I bought the ebook, which they had at the time. Now they have a whole course, which I think would have been much more helpful for me because they actually walk through everything, and there's a link in the comments on to that course. It just changed, like it made everything easy. And so that was really the day, that talk was the day where I flipped from being like I eventually will be popular enough that I can make money just on my brand, my personal brand, to I'm going to use SEO and that's how I'm going to run my business. And then anything else that I get from my personal brand is great, but I'm not going to rely on that. Because I've been doing this for 5 years and I have a podcast and I am known by about maybe 1,000 people. Like maybe on this planet, 1,000 people could tell you who I am and what I do. I have been recognized in the city that I write about most, which is Sofia, Bulgaria, which is where I am now. I've been recognized in public twice, which is a crazy, weird thing. And also, I have had somebody reach out to me and say like, oh, let's go get coffee. I'm excited to meet you. But like, and we became friends, but that is very small. And if I needed to make money based on my personal brand, even after 5 years, I probably wouldn't be able to survive on that, even in Eastern Europe. But with SEO, I was able to fix my original website and build 2 additional websites that make enough money for me to live full-time on my travel writing. Mistake number 5, focusing on vanity metrics. So there are metrics that look really pretty on paper that don't mean anything. So for me, a vanity metric people will look at is that Pinterest number. It'll be like how many views, and that number does not equate to how many people click through. So when I pin something, I only really care, does it get people to my website? Because I run 4, but right now I like carefully run 3 Pinterest accounts. And one of the like views, so how many like monthly views on Pinterest, is 3 times the other account, but I know that they get the same clicks. So if someone looks at one of the accounts, they'll be like, oh, this account's impressive. And if they look at the other account, they'll be like, oh, this account is doing terrible. They get the same clicks. So don't chase vanity metrics and don't compare yourself to someone else's vanity metrics. Mistake number 6, trying to get other bloggers to read your blog. Depending on how you run your blog, if your blog is mainly for SEO, you probably won't have that many like readers. You'll have people who bounce in and hopefully you can convert them into like joining your email list or purchasing something, and hopefully they come back. But if you're not chronologically telling a story and you're trying to get hundreds of thousands of page views a month, most people won't be returning readers. Returning readers is usually like 10 to 15%. So most people who come to your website will have never read your website before and potentially will never read it again unless you can get them to convert to your email list. If you want, 200,000 people to read your website, only 30,000 of those people will be the same people. And they might just read it a couple of times because they're planning a trip to a specific place that you're covering, not because they care about you or know you. Trying to get a blogger just because you like that blogger to interact with your website is really dumb. And I think everybody does it a little bit when they start out and they get very excited, like, oh, X person reads your blog. I don't even read the blogs of my friends. Like, unless they write an article that I think ultimately competes with one of mine, and even then I might not read it just because I don't like to read other people's stuff if it makes me feel like it's going to affect what I'm writing. So unless somebody comes out with I have one friend whose blog I typically will read if she comes out with something, and that's because she has the most beautiful photography. But other than that, I just don't really read other people's blogs unless it's research and part of my business. So trying to get other bloggers who are your friends to follow you on Instagram and you guys interact on Instagram, that's fun if you're already friends. And sometimes it's cool if you're following somebody on Instagram that you really like and they follow you back. That can be cool. But don't try to get them to read your blog. Nobody cares about your blog. People who come to your blog are planning a specific trip. And the few loyal readers you have that read everything, that's great. Love those people, cherish those people. But don't try to turn people that you like into blog readers. It's not enough to sustain a business. They get bombarded with that kind of stuff. Very few people, like nobody wants to read your itinerary unless they're going to that place. So just don't spend any of your effort trying to get people that you look up to read your blog. Just be excited if you meet them at a conference, or like if you follow them on Instagram and then they follow you back, or if you find out your friends of friends and you get networks, like just network with them as like, think of them as like colleagues. Don't try to get them to read your blog. Actually, like don't try to get anyone that you know to read your blog. All right, mistake number 7, not participating in the Facebook community. Travel bloggers, because we have a few conferences that we go to, though this year they're mostly canceled and not everybody goes to every conference. We tend to meet up if we're like in the same town. I have a few friends who are like, well, if we're in the same town, we will always go get work done, or we will go on some trips. But for the most part, it's a big community of people who are never in the same place at the same time. And so we use Facebook almost like it's a company cafeteria. Like I probably spend 90 minutes a day on Facebook for work. I use it for Pinterest threads, collabs, and guest posts. I use it for multiple group threads on Facebook Messenger of other travel bloggers where we literally just talk about stuff all day long. And almost every travel blogger friend that I have, I've either met through Facebook or I've met them at an event that I found out about because of Facebook. So Facebook is great, not just for finding out about events and conferences and getting other people's honest opinions, but it's also great for networking, making friends. If there's a Google algorithm change, watching everybody freak out, like it's basically the travel blogger water. And there are some really big names in travel blogging, like really big names who barely participate in that, but they're not in the same place that you are. So that's fun. Like if you're just starting out, I definitely would join Facebook groups. Mistake number 8, looking up to the wrong travel bloggers. Whether you're looking up to someone who is just like a little bit more established than you, or somebody who, has been around forever, you need to make sure that the travel bloggers you try to emulate have the same business model that you want and are good people. There's some really like not great people in travel blogging, and those stories go around, but it really sucks to find out somebody that you have, read or idolized for, maybe even 10 years at this point is like a terrible person, or is a really bad business person in terms of like will hurt people that they do business with. Don't idolize anyone in the travel blogging industry, but the more you've heard of someone, probably the less you should idolize them in terms of what you're actually going to do for your business. Because if somebody got started more than 3 or 4 years ago and hasn't built any new websites since then, most of the tips and tricks that they know just are outdated. Like you could start a travel blog in 2010 and be the only person like you doing it and build a little bit of a following. But now that business model just barely works, and we'll talk about that more in the business model video that I'm going to do. So don't put anybody on a pedestal. There's nobody who's a travel writer who's actually a famous person like in the travel blogging space. So just if there's somebody who's a travel blogger, just chill out. They're not like famous. Don't follow everything they do. Don't try to do every business thing they do. Just like let them have their business and sit back, network with people, and then see who are the real people you want to emulate. Because the top 10 people whose business models I think are impressive, I had not heard of them when I started travel writing, even though they were already in the game, because they're not the people that I care about the most are not the people that are the most famous in terms of like whose advice I want right now. Mistake number 9, talking badly about other people's business models, especially in the beginning when you're still trying to figure out what works for you. Almost everybody who has a business model has it for a reason. There are some business models that I think are a little bit unethical, but in the beginning, just sit around and learn as much as you can and hear the different things and try to figure out what's for you. But like I thought like I was never going to do paid partnerships or sponsorships because that would cloud my judgment. The ways that other people make money if they're different from what you're thinking, because you don't know where your business is going to be in 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you might want to do things completely differently. You also don't know what's going to happen in your life. If I had been somebody who was really anti-ads, well, now that I have a baby, I can't go do a campaign stuck in Eastern Europe in the middle of 2020's ridiculous travel bans, which are important. I'm not saying they're not important, but a lot of the ways that travel bloggers made money in the past don't even work in 2020. So just don't be judgmental and chill out, because later when you have to do something that everyone remembers that you were so rude about, people will remember. And travel bloggers talk about each other a lot. Mistake number 10, getting burnt out. Travel bloggers can get burnt out in 2 different ways, and I see these all the time with everyone, and I'm not immune to these. At the end of 2018, 2019, I was so burnt out from travel that I thought I could not travel for a year and be just fine. 2020 is teaching me that like I was just burnt out. It wasn't like a totally different state of mind. Yeah, so you can travel way too much and not give yourself enough work time in between and burn out that way, or you can work too hard for too long and be at a desk too many days in a row, blow out your back because we don't really have great ergonomic working spaces usually, and spend way too much time on your website and then be basically like a blind zombie who can't sleep. And I've just seen people burn out both ways. I don't have a single friend who's a travel writer who hasn't been burnt out at some point, either traveling too much or working too much. But you just need to pay attention to it and know that it's coming. So I tend to be someone who rides waves. So like if I want to work, I work as much as possible. If I want to travel, I travel. Well, not right now because I have a tiny baby in the middle of this year, but you know, I travel a lot and then I ride a lot and I tend to go back and forth. But you need to know what works for you to avoid burnout, because if this is a business and it's your hobby and all of a sudden you turned your hobby into your business, well, it's really gonna come as a shock the first time you realize that you neither want to go on another day trip somewhere, nor do you want to write about any place you've ever been. You don't want to edit a photo. You don't want to watch. One day you will wake up and you will not want to travel, and you have to figure out how to stay where that's temporary. A lot of people who go nomadic find out after a couple of years they love their business, they want to run their business. They need to do it from an apartment somewhere. So just pay attention to your mental health. If you found any of these tips helpful, hit like. It really is going to help me grow this channel, and the more people that find this channel, the more videos I can afford to do. If you're interested in any of the video topics that I talked about coming out in the future, like what Facebook groups are the best for travel bloggers, or travel blogger business models, how travel bloggers make money, hit subscribe and then hit the notification bell so you get notified as those topics come out. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.